I mean, it's persisted then, and kind of just do our thing. So, all right, sir, you and I are live. You are, I'll say, the first guinea pig to this live thing that we're calling Ask That. So, Mohammad Azam, thank you for being part of this. I'd like to just start with a quick introduction about you. So, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Mm. Sure, sure. So my name is Mohammad Azam. I go by Azam, the last name. And at present, I am a full-time instructor at Digital Crafts. So it is a boot camp academy in Houston, Texas. And we teach students full stack development in 16 weeks. Before joining Digital Crafts, I was a instructor at the Iron Yard. So I was teaching at the Iron Yard, which was the biggest boot camp academy, most probably in the world. But Iron Yard shut down in November, so now I'm teaching with Digital Crafts. Before consulting firms doing iOS development, native Swift and Objective-C. Before that, I was doing .NET development. So I do a lot of different things, do a speaking engagements at Alt Conference, NS Coder in Mexico City also. So I've been around to different places as a speaker. And I also teach on Udemy. So I have a lot of courses on Udemy, including augmented reality, which is my passion, blockchain programming, which is featured at this particular time. It is actually a featured course over there.
Wow.
And apart from programming, I love to travel. Yeah.
So uh, let me dive into this a bit. I mean, would you call yourself a developer or would you call yourself a teacher?
So I'm both. Yeah. So I'm a developer as a teacher. So I'm always working on my side projects or side products for iOS development. I sometimes do freelance work, but with teaching full time, it's kind of hard to, take on some freelance work. But sometimes I do take on freelance work. And before being an instructor or a educator, I was developing full time.
Interesting. So, so how much, as somebody who's only been a developer, I find my study time being in that of the development languages or whatever I'm doing. Do you find
hmm
yourself spending more time in the study of that craft or the study of how to best teach that craft? Kind of an interesting
Um,
chasm.
Yeah, so I would say, I try to be with pace with the technology. I mean, the React, Redux, Vue
Sure.
framework, and all these full stack development. But my real passion is iOS, so I always am doing something on the side. So working on some apps. Right now, I'm planning to recreate my gardening app, vegetable tree gardening app. So I'm recreating it from scratch. I would say the time is split between, I would say 80-20. 80% I'm teaching, 20% I'm actually
Okay.
developing something like a product.
Sure.
Uh, but Udemy courses I'm also teaching, so that also is part of that 80%.
So how different do you feel like those courses are? I kind of I want to get into why you started teaching like the online space and kind of how that's gotten there. But how do you feel that they are different from a learning perspective? I mean, you've got boot camp style stuff. You've got people doing stuff online. Where do
Mhm.
you how do you take advantage of each of those?
Yeah, so my full-time job with the digital crafts is basically a boot camp where I actually physically have to go and give them a lecture and give them assistance to the students. Boot camp is great and it's 16 weeks. It's great because you have a instructor right in front of you physically and you can go and ask the instructor questions. And we give like projects and group work. You will also get the opportunity to work with different developers in group projects. You will have the opportunity to work on much larger projects, integration with GitHub and TeamCity and all those different kind of things you learn uh, by physically attending a boot camp. On the side, what I do is Udemy courses, and most of my Udemy courses are obviously Udemy is not like physical boot camp. It's just a website where you can host your courses, so remote kind of a learning. And basically, it's good for people who want who cannot attend, I guess, physical boot camp. But I try to make my Udemy courses more of things that I like to do, which is more of iOS development.
Okay.
So boot camp, my full-time job, I love WebStack, but my real passion is in iOS. So I teach WebStack at my full-time job and do Udemy at my side job.
Do you find that well, I mean, obviously the engagement is going to be a bit different between the two. Do you find that there's a high engagement level on the online courses?
Um, there is high engagement. I mean, people do message like if they have questions, especially when I released the augmented reality course back in July, maybe last year.
Sure.
Reality was a really hot topic. We're using ARKit. So I got like really a lot of questions regarding, hey, how can I do this? How can I do this? How about you add a section on this? How about you add a section on this?
Sure,
But
sure.
obviously that kind of communication is over the email or over the messages, and which is very different from the boot camp kind
Yeah.
of communication, which is physically there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find it hard to scale that interaction? Because I would have to guess somebody comes up with something new, you either want to change the course a bit or add something to it later on or kind of rebroadcast the aha moment, if you will. Do you do you find that scaling piece kind of hard?
Scaling piece is hard, yes. Like when I developed my first course, which was about MapKit development with Swift and iOS, I think I used Swift 1. And as soon as I launched the course, after a month later, Swift 2 came out and everything broke. And then people are like, "Wait, we can't
Yeah,
even
yeah,
compile your code. I mean, this is
sure,
completely." So there's no way for me to go and edit the course because, I mean, the only way you can do that is to re-record the whole thing.
sure.
So that is definitely the scaling up the course or re-recording the course, which is getting obsolete. So you always have to be on your toes because everything is changing so fast.
So what's your hot tip or hot sauce there to kind of keep up with it? I mean, are you using certain tools? You got a, I don't know, some silver bullet in there that makes it easy to keep up with it?
Not really. I think if a technology is changing, I mean, if the technology is completely changing, like Swift 1 and Swift 2, there's no easy way out. I mean, you have to re-record the whole course about MapKit or
Sure.
anything. But if my other course was about server-side Swift using Vapor, and Vapor 1 came out, and then 2 came out, and you can add like additional sections like, hey, this is a little bit different in Vapor 2. I don't have to record the whole course, but there's a little bit sections are different, although I
Yeah.
did record the whole course.
Yeah, yeah.
But Vapor 3 will be similar to Vapor 2, so I don't have to record the whole thing. So you can add like different pieces of information can also explain that, hey, if you run this code over here, it's going to break. So here's the solution. But there's no silver bullet. I think if it's changing drastically, then you have to record the whole course and throw away the old one.
Well, you had mentioned earlier about Facebook and Redux and React and all that, but full stack stuff, and
Hmm.
the React stack obviously is moving
Oh yeah,
fast. I don't know, they're up 17, 18 version, whatever.
yeah.
So I got to imagine that can feel like a bit of a chasing a train
Oh
recording.
yeah.
There's a lot there to take in.
Yeah, I usually don't really create courses on web development, especially on React because they change so fast that by the time I'm finished, I know it will be obsolete. So most of my or 100% of my courses are on iOS development using Swift.
So I want to ask you, and I'm going to ask everybody this. What was the thing that drew you to doing software development? So go
Mhm.
way back in the day, whether that's a month
Yeah.
or 20 years. What was a light switch that came on for you that said, I really want to kind of grind this out every day and commit my life to it?
Well, going way back, I mean, I was born and raised in Pakistan, and back when I was growing up, you only had like maybe three or two choices. You can either become a doctor or you can become which is a computer engineer. So
Right.
I didn't really wanted to be a doctor because I was grossed out with like blood and all that
Sure.
stuff. But
Yeah.
so the only choice that was left at that point is to, well, there's computers, and my family was already involved in computers. My uncles were doing computer development, I mean, software
Okay.
development, and they were always like, we were playing games on Amiga systems and all those kind of
Yeah.
things. So I was also playing games. That's how I got interested in science to create some games. And later on, I got more interested, not really in the games market. I actually got fed up with games, but more into business kind of apps and what augmented reality and all that stuff. But yes, in when I was growing up, there was not much of a choice. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah,
Have you ever thought about screw this, I'm done. I just want to get out and go do something else, like be a doctor?
not be a doctor, but I think I always wanted to, and I still want to. I don't know if I want to like go get away from programming, but I always wanted to become one of those people, I don't know what they're called, who take their camera and they go and record like animals or
Oh
like
yeah.
wildlife,
Sure. Sure.
like kind of like for Planet Earth
Yeah.
documentary kind of things. I always wanted to do that, still want to do that, but never really got a chance or never really know where to even start on that.
Yeah, you just go get a camera, I think.
And that's
Start
it.
start recording the squirrels in the backyard.
Yeah.
So then where in this path did you get kind of turned on to AI?
AR, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
Augmented
AR. Yeah, yeah.
augmented reality. I would say I was always interested, like when it was coming out, like a couple of years ago, maybe IKEA put out the app for furnitures, and there were different frameworks like Vuforia. There was Mataio framework, which was acquired by Apple. In it way earlier than it was even than anyone was actually doing it at that point. And I knew that when Apple acquired Mataio, the company, that Apple is going to come out with some augmented reality framework. And last year, 2017, Apple did come out with that. And it's pretty easy to use for at least basic level stuff. And I mean, most of this mathematical stuff it is done in the framework itself. But I think augmented reality is still very early phases, and we are going to see more when we get to smart glasses and so on.
Yeah, so I mean, on that note, you mentioned mathematics, and it was one of the things I wanted to ask you. I mean, how much of a mathematical background do you need to have?
I don't think you need that much. You only need like concepts of, for most of the stuff that I'm doing, I mean, you need really concepts of like the 3D space, XYZ axis.
Sure.
If you are obviously creating some app for measurement using your
Sure,
augmented
sure,
reality, then you will
sure.
need some sort of a points basics like the formula for the point and all that stuff. But not really. I mean, most of the hard stuff, which is plane detection, vertical and horizontal plane detection, it's just one line of code, and that will automatically detect the plane.
Interesting.
Then it's up to the developer to how complicated they want to go, like they want to rotate stuff, orient stuff in different ways or not.
So would you say that the barrier to entry is relatively on par with the rest of the stuff on a mobile phone, or is it a I don't know, pretty intense to kind of pick that path?
I think it's usually most people think that when they're working with augmented reality or any framework like which is related to augmented reality, that you need to be like a math wizard to be able to achieve anything. But that's not really the case, especially with not augmented reality. I mean, AR kit, you can definitely get way ahead and write much less code to get more done because there's so much stuff that is built into the system. I use SceneKit, but you can use Unity for
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yep.
creating your scenes. But yeah, over there also you have a lot of choices to do that.
Sure, sure. Have you messed around much with Google's? I forget what it's called. I want to
AR
say
Core,
Yeah, yeah, ARCore.
I did a little bit, but it seems like it's still in very early phases and it's extremely hard without any documentation to, I mean, they only
Sure,
have like one sample code
sure.
and that sample code I think is kind of like the very core, like really at the bottom level
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of the code that they wrote. So they don't really have any libraries like SceneKit and SpriteKit that they can utilize. So hopefully they will create some sort of high level layer on top of their actual framework.
Do you feel like the concepts should transfer over pretty well, or do you think the two runtimes will be wildly different?
I think they are very different because Apple provides that soft and really nice and cushy layer of SceneKit. If you want to just get started, that's where what I use. I mean, you can definitely go down to the Metal framework or SpriteKit, which is a two-dimensional framework. But SceneKit is the more popular one for if you're creating obviously three-dimensional AR kit applications. And then you can also use Unity if you want to.
So, okay. So then we are certainly in the early phases of AR. I mean, where do you see it? Like, what's been some of the great apps that you've seen, or great
Hmm.
use cases? I don't necessarily should say apps, but I mean, we've all, maybe not everybody, but we've all seen the kind of virtual ruler, which is great. That
Mm.
first night you play with it, and you're like, all right, whatever. I'm going to go get my real ruler. But what are some of the great apps, and then where are we? Where do you think the industry will transition to where this stuff starts to become a bit more mainstream and not like I don't want to say taboo, but
Yeah. Yeah, right now most of the stuff and even some of the demos that I put out on the Twitter are most like gimmicky. I mean, they don't really mean that much. Um, I think some of the apps that I've seen, like location-based apps, where you're just looking on your, obviously, if you have the smart glasses, it will make more sense. But you're looking through your smart glasses and you're just looking at all the direction from point A to point B, and the direction is laid out in front of you in augmented AR world. So the line from point A to point B with all the turns and the directions with the street names is all laid out using
sure,
AR. So that's a really good use case. Other use cases can be like if you are maybe like in the future you will be in an office and they will give you literally nothing, just a desk to sit on, and everything will be augmented. Like everything mean like even your screens, the dual displays, those will be augmented.
okay,
The theater applications where, and this is some of the demos I created, like the theater applications where you are watching a movie. So you're just put on your smart glasses and you can watch your movie, whatever you're watching, in a very large scale customizable screen, which
hmm.
is just augmented screen. So all of those use cases definitely are something to come in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, but you also so you've taken it beyond the phone. I
Hmm.
mean, I guess glass if it's an Apple glasses, they certainly pair to some Apple device, but you took kind of a big leap there from off the phone. Do you think we're gonna have to wait a while for the phone to or the mobile experience to like drive the rest of that stuff? Just and I ask that only in the sense that the phone is attainable to millions and millions
Hmm.
of people, whereas the glasses may or may not be, depending on a price tag
Hmm.
or the newishness of something. But Apple's got a really good way, and Google as well will have a good way of kind of snapping their fingers and saying, "Oh, and look,
Hmm.
92 billion phones now have AR2." Um,
Hmm.
do you think it'll drive some of this adoption, or will we start to see the this other screens and other I don't know hardware kind of
Hmm.
just appear on the market as well?
I think with the phone or any device that we are holding in our hand, the reality is very limited. Like measurement app is one of the only examples I can give you, like that you can actually use the phone to do all of those things. The AR experience will truly shine if it's done in a very seamless way. So for that, you will definitely need glasses. I would say glasses are at least 2 to 5 years, or maybe even maybe 3 to 5 years away from the current release. And you will definitely need the phone to work with the glasses. The glasses will only be used to display the content, which is provided to you by the phone, just like kind of like Apple Watch.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
at least the early Apple Watches.
yeah.
But once we have the glasses in the future, we can kind of expect that everyone will be wearing those glasses if they want to get that experience.
Sure. Yeah. You think it will raise new privacy concerns?
Um, I'm not sure. I don't, yeah, really think that much about privacy.
I mean, I asked that in the sense that now you've taken a common device,
Hmm.
uh, be it your glasses, which would be
Oh,
on you all the time, and now you would have to think. I mean, even with the iPhone 10, they're
hmm.
casting facial recognition and mapping, areas. It's just not unrealistic to think your glasses, could
Oh
do
yeah,
that in some time, which means now you're running around
with the camera. Yeah.
with a
Or
or LED system,
LG.
whatever, and you've now got a 3D face of of me,
Hmm.
and you're running off around with that. I don't know. I mean, that's a
Yeah, I mean, I think it will definitely. I think Google Glass, when it came out, it raised some concerns when people were going to the theater
yeah, yeah,
or movie theater, and hey, you were
yeah.
recording a movie. I think we're going to see the same concerns over here. Um, I think when a person is developing an application, they will have to somehow use the geocoding or geolocation to turn it off when you're actually going inside the theater, or there will be maybe new rules written for these things.
Sure, sure. I mean,
Mm.
there was once a time where cameras were not as prevalent as they are, and
Yeah.
now everybody's got one in their pocket, if not two. So, what um, what about big companies? Are you seeing big companies take this on now and be a kind of front runner with it?
Right now, I only have seen maybe Home Depot doing a little bit, not with the AR kit, but a little bit of augmented reality to, if you want to buy a paint, so just use the augmented reality app and it will paint your walls to see that how it looks before you
Okay,
actually paint them.
sure.
And IKEA, obviously, that putting out the furniture and all that stuff. But for other companies like for medical companies, they can definitely use that to do like, to project on the person's body that, okay, heart is over here and heart looks like this, and these are the different areas of the human body, without doing actual markings. You can just see all of that stuff using ARKit. VR will also come into play in that scenarios like medical and all that stuff. I think it will be great in educational purposes also. Like if you're teaching young kids about calculations, they will be able to see maybe pictures coming to life or stories coming to life right
Yeah,
in front of them.
yeah.
So definitely over there, there's a big market. But it's I mean, I wouldn't say slow progress, but it's very early stages to see where it goes.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about at all is kind of Microsoft's role in this with their Hololens and
Hmm.
what they have going on. Have you played around much with the Hololens?
No, I have unfortunately not played around with it. Yeah. I have heard that they have a limited view. I'm not sure how or at
Sure.
uh, what is their update on that.
Yeah.
There are some the Leap Motion.
Yeah.
Is that the Leap Motion company? I think they are maybe coming out with glasses pretty soon. I know that they showed something on Twitter like this is how it will look like.
Yeah.
So let's see how it looks like, I guess.
Yeah. It seems like everybody's kind of got one foot in the race: Apple, Google,
Mm,
Facebook, Microsoft. Some super expensive and some not really talked about. So I don't know.
yeah.
It's an exciting space to kind of see how it unfolds. Um, Kind of tying it back to education, do you see that changing your courses and how you teach in the future?
Um, for how I teach in the future, that's a good question. So my courses are mostly for people who have already, at least most of the time, passed that state of the elementary learning,
Sure.
uh, because they are like all mostly like grown-ups. But you can still add augmented reality or virtual reality. Obviously, we're teaching web stack development, so they will have to use some sort of AR framework for JavaScript, which is I think it's called A-Frame and
Hmm.
WebVR
I didn't know that.
and ARJS. A very, very kind of like an introductory level, or they're kind of like starting out.
Sure.
Not sure how I can actually use to promote my own courses. Maybe we can have some sort of notes in the classroom that are all augmented, like shortcuts to GitHub or shortcuts to Git, shortcuts to this. And you just look at the wall and this just augmented piece of paper, which will show you all the shortcuts and things
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, you have to imagine, I mean, everything in programming is, I shouldn't say everything, but it's a very interrelated, hierarchical chain of things that happen. So you have to imagine that there would be um, a very interesting visual way to represent a
Mm,
bunch of code that you wrote, and almost such that um, because it would be visual in nature, you could kind of like swim through the thing and see like where the function calls are. I mean, I'm thinking of like a process flow, right?
mm,
Or a sequence diagram. And I could actually picture a world where somebody, like pulled up your code stack and was like, yeah, that just looks like a ball of spaghetti, like a literal
yeah.
ball of spaghetti. And then look at this
Hmm.
one over here. Look how much better that one looks. And
That's true.
um,
Yeah.
that'd be there's your $1 million idea. You can take
Yeah.
that one and run with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, in education, I was actually teaching my wife some calculus. I think it was one or no, not even calculus. It was algebra, and she was trying to solve some equations like whatever x plus y equals to zero or something, or x plus y is equal to minus five or whatever. And it would be really nice if you can actually just look at the equation, and it will show you what the actual equation represents in
Oh yeah,
mathematical form,
yeah,
like a parabola or a
yeah,
line or a tangent or these kind of things. So it's definitely going to introduce students who are having difficulty understanding these concepts, uh, give them visual representation of,
sure,
well, what a line is, what a point is, what a parabola is. Yeah.
sure, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of some crazy stuff to think about. I mean, I think about how my son and my daughter have grown up. Computers have been firsthand in their educational experience from the time that they were in kindergarten. My son is
Mm.
now he's gonna be 12, and they see the world different.
Yeah.
It's it's an enlightening thing to watch. They don't get mad about a Mac versus Windows versus Google or Office or that. They just use them all interchangeably. It's not a big deal. In fact,
Mm.
they ask a lot of very obvious questions, which is always fun. Like, I don't understand why I need to learn this Google Excel thing or this Microsoft Excel thing when we just use Google all the time. Yeah,
Mm.
that's kind of
True.
it's a hard one to explain, kid. Um, Before we close out, I want to ask you, how do you study with everything changing? So
Hmm.
you teach. How do you keep afloat with all this?
So I used to, and I still a little bit, read books, but reading books requires I think it's just taking too much time. So what I have been doing these days is just watching video tutorials, and with video tutorials, which are like 16 hours and you can get it for like $10. That's, I mean, practically free basically
Yeah,
on Udemy. So I never really used to watch any tutorials, but I just started maybe like 2, 3 weeks ago and I'm really enjoying it. Um, and it's much faster to learn. I don't know if it can replace a book, but it kind of also sometimes can when the tutor or when the person who's teaching you is really, really educated, not like writing spaghetti code, but also going through the code and making it much better, which you cannot get it from maybe a book.
sure. Yeah, totally.
But it's definitely now I am watching more and more videos about like maybe web frameworks and all those kind of things, and trying to learn those using videos.
What would you say makes a good video? Or how
Um,
could somebody else, who hasn't
mhm,
necessarily started going into watching videos? There's a bunch of them: Udemy,
mhm,
Pluralsight. I'm not forgetting the other big one. But regardless,
mhm.
what would be the litmus test to say whether or not something's good or not good, or should they invest in it, or maybe it sucks when they got into it and that I don't
Hmm.
feel bad for getting out.
Yeah, I mean, if you are trying to produce a video, I mean, if you're going into that business of creating videos, first thing you should always make sure if you're an instructor is not to sound robotic. I mean,
Sure.
I create my Udemy videos. I'm always sounding like friendly. I'm not talking down at anyone. I'm talking about, okay, we can do it this way, but we can also do it this way. So always try to give them like different options that it's just a matter of choice if you want to do it this way or this way. And also always cover the basics first and like don't like jump into some advanced topics if you're teaching without covering obviously the basics. It's always also a good idea, which I'm learning now, to give, when I recorded for lynda.com, like I recorded two courses for Lynda. And the thing that I learned is that it's good to give students a start state of the app and also the end state of the app. All
Sure.
right. So this will allow them to start the project and then write the final project.
Yep.
Yes. And basically for consultation.
Sure.
So, and always also don't go into that much detail, like, which is kind of weird, but when you're looking first time launching Xcode, don't go, okay, let me show you the file and then all these menu items. No, forget about that. Like, this is the left pane, this is the middle pane, this is the right pane. Left pane is for the file explorer, right pane is where you write code, and middle pane is write code, and right pane is the attributes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just keep it really simple instead of overly complicated.
Agree. You got a little programmer in the background.
Yeah, I have some. I think I have kids. It will be that BBC reporter kind of thing.
Yeah. Hey, you're looking at our HQ. I mean,
Yeah.
surprised mine haven't busted through the doors. So before we leave, I want to just thank you for doing what you do, whether it's speaking at conferences or putting together courses. I mean, others are benefiting from the time that you have put into that, not only just learning it, but putting it into a cohesive format that somebody else can understand and take. So I think that's very cool, and not enough, gratitude necessarily goes around in our world. So thank you for that. What My last question for you then would be, what would be one thing, two things that you wish you would have known 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that may have altered the course of where you are today?
Change anything.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy where I am. I'm teaching on Udemy. I'm teaching at the boot camp, basically giving people an opportunity for their, future. What I tell always my students is that I like teaching, but I am more interested in the outcome of the teaching. So if you are over here passionate about your learning web stack development or iOS development, and then you go and work for Facebook or some other company or Google or Apple, and that will make me most happy because I can now point to you and say, hey, you know what, he attended my boot camp and he was a really hardworking person and he is making a great life and
Sure.
obviously it's making things happen, maybe changing the world even. So that is always more interested to me. Obviously, the teaching part is really interesting also, but the outcome is more interesting to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, before we go, and I will put the stuff down in the notes, but where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, you can visit me on Twitter. My handle is, or Twitter avatar handle is Azam Sharp, AZAMSHARP. And you can also visit my Udemy courses. Just search Mohammad Azam and you'll get to my Udemy courses. And my website is azamsharp.com.
And we'll put all that in all of the goo below. And with that, thank you, sir, for the time tonight, and let you get back to your family.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see the swim through code AR world of my code. So,
Sounds good. Yeah.
all right, sir. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.